scarier and more claustrophobic, in my opinion, in the fourth film. And again, when we go into great detail of that, of when Peter Chesney, which I can't give too much away, but Peter Chesney and Mick go into this amazing, talk about exactly what the hell went on during the creation of that set. And I think that will make you appreciate, as a fan of Nightmare 4 and a fan of horror films in general, that will make you appreciate that sequence all the more.
And by the time you're done reading that, you'll also be a fan of toll booths.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the interviews where Mick had this brilliant idea to just keep it as is, as it sounds. And in transcribing that, I think I captured the essence of that sequence, because there is this beautiful juxtaposition.
Blake did such a good job. It's basically, and he does an interview driving up to Orlando from
Georgia,
from deep Florida, and he's going through a series of toll booths as he talks, and it's pretty hilarious.
Oh yeah, it is, and that's something else, is that you could tell, even though it's been 30 years since this film first hit the theaters, that there is still such an extreme love and such a vivid recollection of memories from the set, several of which, I might as well say almost all of them, that no Nightmare fan has ever heard. And that is, again, part of one of the key points of this book, was to not only include the stories from the people that were behind the making of the film, but also to include all the stories that you've never heard, because we all know what went on in front of the camera. We all know all the dialogue, we quote all the one-liners and all that good stuff, but how many of us really know what went on behind the camera, what led to the making of this amazing film that, for all intents and purposes, before Freddy versus Jason, was the highest grossing and most popular film in this series. And that speaks volumes about the production and everything, and about everybody that worked on it.
Well, and also one of the highest grossing horror films ever.
Oh, absolutely. Up
until that point, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Nightmare 3 carries a very similar distinction. Nightmare 3 was the first time an independent film from an independent studio swept the box office and knocked a major movie out of the number one spot. Nightmare 3 debuted and knocked Platoon out of the number one spot and took number one at the box office. And that is not something that happened when you have a cast like Martin Sheen and Marlon Brando and Charlie Sheen and all the others. A smaller movie like Nightmare going up against a box office giant like Platoon and knocking it out of the water, it's just not something that you hear about today. Today, you don't hear those stories about smaller independent films sweeping the box office and leaving such a lasting impression. In 1988 and 87, it happened, and that's a wonderful thing.
Well, and that's just because we were freaking awesome.
As you can tell, I'm going all in depth, and Mick is like, it's because we were awesome. He's oversimplifying. What is it, Mick?
Here, if we weren't just as freaking amazing as we were, well, we'd have nothing.
Well, and Mick says something great in the book, and I have to point it out because it is one of my favorite parts. It doesn't have to do with anything about the stories, but Mick was explaining something to somebody, and they accused him of being deferential, of not giving himself enough credit as far as ideas for Nightmare 4, Nightmare 4 especially. And that's true. I have to tend to agree with him. Mick was behind a lot of the great ideas. Like, I don't know if I can I'll let Mick give it away, but, the kaleidoscope thing. Mick, to let him know the mind-blowing thing behind the kaleidoscope thing. That was something that came from you.
The kaleidoscope actually came to me in a dream. And I actually saw in a dream that I was in a kaleidoscope looking down at Freddy's eye. And he's turning the kaleidoscope. And in the writhing in the kaleidoscope are all these body parts and stuff like that. And so I took that immediately to Rachel Talalay, and I knew that we were looking for a transition into we were looking for transitions everywhere. We were looking for interesting transitions, and she loved the idea. And I got together with Peter Chesney, and we actually built the way that we did the set is we did a series of we took the idea of rock polishers. A rock polisher is it's a container, a round container, and then you drop it inside of this little box, and the box has got a motor down here, and it spins it. One of the wheels spins the container around, and it polishes your rocks. And so what we did was we both sat there and we're having this discussion. I said, well, yeah, what we could do is we could take that idea, and then we just take the idea of, like, we take the ends off of the can, off of this container, and just put a whole bunch of those together and turn them all different ways. And that's what we did. And that was one of our transitions. And we put Freddie was sitting on a bicycle seat with a pole at the back that was strapped around him, so that and it was on a counterbalance with 35 to 40 feet of just sitting on the end of a rod, and then that was counterbalanced and went all the way back. And this contraption took the whole side of a stage, and it went from one side of the stage to the other. And the counterweight was over in one fire lane, and the end of the and the light that shows through the glass at the end of it was at the other. And he would dance. He could dance down that down those spinning things and make his foot look like he was touching the spinning, counter spinning tubes. And just be completely free from them. And so that happened.
And that's just one example. That's just one example of the kind of stuff. That story has never been told to mass audiences before tonight, so you're hearing that story for the first time. And this book is full of moments like that. You're hearing all these things. And it's funny because Mick goes back to saying, the other day he was like, Blake, you know me, you've known me long enough. When I say something, you and I are both hearing it for the first time. And this
I was just going to say that. We're always, everything that I say is coming out for the first time. Sometimes we would like a chance to edit it, but no, it's not there, because you know what? We're live. I'm live.
Because you're an artist, and artists don't have to make sense. It just has to happen, right? Is that what it is? It just has to happen.
Is it autism or is it art?
No, see, that's beautiful right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And
Artistic or autistic? You decide.
I'm so proud of this. And we had a Travis, we had a contest running, Travis, for the book. And because another distinction Nightmare 4 has is this amazing soundtrack. With Vinnie Vincent and Drama Rama and Sinead O'Connor and all these others, and it was the contest was write a review of a song from the soundtrack, and if we pick your review, then you get your review published in the book, and you get a free copy of the book. So it was kind of a really cool contest, and then Mick had this brilliant idea for like a trailer for the book, this contest trailer, and it was beautiful. I don't know if you've seen it, but you have to watch it. Mick gets completely fucking covered in blood. It's beautiful. Oh, Jesus.
There's a story going to be in the book told by Kevin Benson, the music supervisor, and he was telling about Sinead as they're recording Sinead O'Connor, and they had been trying to buy the rights to the music. Everybody that offered a song up gave the rights for $5,000 for the soundtrack for the and these were people that were just barely breaking in, you know, including well, just think of everybody that you can think of that was in that soundtrack is pretty amazing. But one of them was Sinead O'Connor, and all of a sudden she started to blow up just as she's recording her song for the movie, and there's a story about the argument that Bob Shea is having with Rachel Talalay and Kevin Benson in one of the sound rooms. that was just they couldn't hear anything, but she had basically Rachel was trying to say that they should spend $10,000 on this song because Sinead O'Connor because she's blowing up. And Bob didn't want to spend the extra $5,000, and so they were having this knockdown, drag-out fight in one of the separate studios, right? That they'd gone in, and everybody, all the musicians, and you know, everybody is watching them argue back and forth with each other, and the raising of hands, and these are two people that like really argue, right? You know, so I just love to imagine to myself just being one of the musicians and watching this argument go on. And Sinead O'Connor, of course, was one of the ones that was watching the argument go on. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, that's another thing about this film. It's got a great film, you know, great set design, great effects, a great soundtrack. There was and it rose from such adversity because, as I've learned, because I've done screenwriting work before, when you're in Hollywood and you're in the business, a lot of the times something will be said and, you know, something's told that it's going to happen. But it doesn't end up happening that way. And when a production is already underway and a writer's strike hit, you're okay because the production has already started before the writer's strike is official. So everybody can put their name on the script, and there's no worry about giving credit where credit is due and having a good, solid, tangible object, a tangible script. But this film, when it started, the writer's strike was already underway, and I think that's an extreme a form of adversity to overcome to make a successful film. I mean, think about it, Travis. I mean, if you coin some amazing line, and because there's a strike going on, you don't get to have the credit, but Vic gets to have the credit for you, you're not going to be exactly too happy because it's your fucking words, it's your credit, it's your idea, it was your brainchild, and if you don't get credit for it, you're probably going to be more than a little put off. And I think that was the case with Nightmare 4 because they started with this film, you know, and literally there was not a writer attached to it that could get credit. I mean, they used pseudonyms. I think Scott Pierce was the pseudonym that Jimmy Ken Wheat used, and then Brian Helgeland, who went on to do Mystic River and L.A. Confidential, he also it was based on a screenplay or a story by him. So, again, you've got all these people that would become major Hollywood players later. Rennie Harlan, I mean, even, you know, went on to do, what was it, Cliffhanger and Deep Blue Sea, and I think he did Dominion, a prequel to The Exorcist or something. Rennie Harlan has had an impressive career post-Nightmare. But Nightmare was only his second American film. The first film was called Prison, and it had Kane Hodder and Viggo Mortensen in it, and it was barely known horror film. So, I mean, stepping into the shoes Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and by Rennie's own admission, he was not very strong with the English language. There was a language barrier there. So I think that all those things together, and the fact that this film rose like Freddy from, you know, the junkyard, you know, tomb he was in. They rose from adversity and became something so much greater. And I think that's another thing about this book is that it is truly behind the screams, and that is all Mick's coinage. I have no credit in that whatsoever. I called him panicking about making a video announcement. I was like, what the hell are we going to call this thing? What are we going to call it? And he's like, how about I call you back in like 5 minutes and I'll have something for you. So I called him back and he's like, Behind the Screams. And I was like, I like it. And he was like, good, because that's what it's going to fucking be. So that's how that came along. And Behind the Screams is beautiful because it brings all the images of Freddy Krueger and the Nightmare films together. There's horror, there's comedy, there's action, there's an amazing blend of those things, and that's something that's very hard to come by, in my opinion, in a lot of modern films, to have